this is Chef Kathy from the Lake Clear Lodge, and we're coming into fall. And even during other times of year, people like to make more Oktoberfest German-style dishes. And we always make sauerbraten, also beef roulade, but sauerbraten is one that you can make with most any cut of beef. So that means you don't need tender cuts of beef. You can use the least expensive, if there is such a thing these days. So sauerbraten is something I like to show people how to do. Most people really love it. It's going to have kind of a sweet sour taste. You don't use any sugar or anything, but it's going to have more of a sweet sour taste to it. And some people really love sauerbraten, and a lot of people really can't get it many places, especially, well, the way we do it, which is not with the ginger snaps, by the way. You're going to find recipes with ginger snaps in it. I've actually never had it that way, but I've never made it that way. So we're showing you the kind of sauerbraten recipe that my mother-in-law told me, and she's straight from Germany. So it's very, very simple. Now this piece of meat is a rump roast, so it's not the most tender piece. A lot of times in the restaurant we use the top round or the bottom round, but again, if you have any kind of piece of beef that's typically in a fairly large chunk that you can cut into slices. Once it's roasted, it's going to work. I-round works great because it's fairly even to cut the slices. But even if you have a really uneven piece, or you could even use more of a like a roast, a 2-inch roast kind of thing with a bone in as well. Now this does not have a bone in. I would recommend if you don't have a piece of beef with the bone in, you find some to roast it with. But this is all about just marinating it today. So let's go ahead and do that. So our beef, now it's kind of fits in this roast pan, but it's a little too small. So you want something that is going to have enough room to put in veggie pieces, onion, celery, leeks, anything you have on hand that are the pieces that you don't need to use for something else. Good pieces, but not great to use in a stew. So again, this is a way to use up veggie pieces as well, and they add flavor to your broth as it's roasting. So I'm just going to put this piece of beef right in the pot, right in the pan. I'm going to marinate it in. Now we're going to marinate it 3 to 5 days. We're going to do vegetables. I have part of an onion here, so I'm going to cut that up into it and just distribute the vegetables. It's not really imperative when it's sitting there. I have some leek here, so I'm just going to again cut it into larger chunks, pieces. I have some celery pieces, another kind of leek leaf, and we're going to throw that right in. Now I may find some more celery. I like to use a lot of celery because it gives it a nice, not even rounded flavor. I'm not even sure how to explain it, but it gives it some great flavor, great nutrition, and a great way to use celery like tops and bottoms. This is a pepper I have, and I'm just going to cut this up again into chunks, put it in here. I don't usually use pepper. I wouldn't use a lot of green pepper or that sort of thing, but I have this one. I think it's a little bit more of a hot pepper, so we're going to marinate it in that. So again, a little bit of room around the outside of your roast so that you can put in liquid to marinate it in. Now basically 3 things in your marinade. Wine, and again, don't use a good wine. If you have a wine that has turned, this is perfect because we're marinating it in vinegar. So I can use pretty much this as most of my vinegar, even though I have some apple cider vinegar here. Again, I don't generally use the white cider or the white vinegar. I use more of the apple cider vinegar, and I have a little bit of that here. I only put in a little bit because I know this wine has turned and it's going to be just about as much vinegar as I need. And then water. Now I place water when I do my roast. I roast a lot of things in water and veggies, so I have the broth. So water is always on hand when I do roasting, even if it's just a little bit, because the amount of broth you can get out of most anything is incredible. Now I'm going to marinate this without any kind of bone, but when I roast it, I'm going to find bone so that my juices and my broth that I make the sauce with does have a little bit of bone broth in it. The other thing in your marinade will be a little bit of salt, not too much because you're going to salt and season your sauce when you make it anyway, but one particular thing is peppercorns. Whole peppercorns, if you can get them or have them, they do make a difference. It makes it very earthy. And a fair amount of those, I would say a tablespoon or two, depending on how much you have in there. Again, this is very forgiving, so don't worry too much about, you know, what poundage of meat, how much of this or how much of that. Just don't go overboard, like I said, on peppers or, you know, things like that that might give your sauce a different flavor. And we're going to marinate this for 3 to 5 days. Now, if you have, now this is plastic, but it's commercial plastic. You'll want to marinate it either in glass or something that your vinegar isn't going to eat through, like metal. So don't do it in metal, preferably do it in glass or some very heavy-duty commercial type plastic. This glass wasn't quite big enough. I'm going to pour these juices in there. It wasn't quite big enough, so I didn't do it in that, but I also have the, you know, the commercial plastic. Now you want to cover it so that you're, you know, you just need to cover it in the fridge. If you can remember to do so, turn it every day or so, or a couple times a day if you're in, well, we have a walk-in cooler, but if you're in the fridge and remember it, turn it over, because what's going to happen is this marinade is really going to go a half to an inch inside your meat if you do it for, especially if you do it like for 5 days. And nothing is going to go bad. It's in an acid medium, so as long as you keep turning it or have it mostly covered, it's going to be fine in there. That's what it's all about. I'm going to give you my version of sauerbraten in our cookbook, the PDF, and that tells you all about, I think it's the Greeks or the Romans who carried meat in vinegar for their armies so that they had you know, fresh meat to eat, and it stayed, you know, it stayed good. Now I have a top to this, and it may or may not go on there, so I'm going to flip it because it doesn't quite fit down. And then, oh, one more thing to add in there, if you have them, very important. If you have them, try and get them bay leaves. They make all the difference in the world as well. So I just put them in. Again, this is going to be roasted, so just putting them in there right now isn't going to do much as far as all those veggies, and just to kind of soften them up for when you roast them. But you're going to put them in there anyway, just to start them out. So this doesn't quite fit. I'm going to turn it over, and then I have a piece of foil. Now, if you're putting your meat in a pan, don't just cover it with foil on top if you don't have a top, because the vinegar will kind of eat through the foil, and obviously you don't want that to happen. So if you don't have a pan with a top, cover it with plastic wrap first and then with foil. I'm just doing this because so it'll keep the top on, because it doesn't quite fit. I needed to turn it over, and then less likely to spill if it gets tipped or anything like that. And a fair amount of liquid in there. I could even put a little bit more. And maybe tonight or tomorrow, I'll open it up, turn the meat over. The liquid really doesn't go anywhere, but if I wanted to add a little bit more, then if I didn't feel it was over the top, then I could do that. So this is going to sit in your fridge 3 to 5 days. 3 is totally fine. 5 is even okay as well. It'll be well marinated and ready to roast. And then later on, we'll go through the roasting, how we make the sauce, and how we slice it up. So in the meantime, we'll be back soon, and stay nourished.